short stories, even speeches. I've always been amazed at people that could take a message and weave it into a story. Over the years, I've given a number of speeches about songwriters, and my favorite songwriter has always been Harry Chapin, and I've talked about him a few times in the past, but it's been a long time. When I was younger, I liked Harry Chapin because of his story songs that tended to be too long to play on the radio. One of his songs that some of you may have heard is Cats in the Cradle, which still gets a lot of airtime. Unfortunately, in 1981, he was killed in an automobile accident at the age of 38. And as I've grown older, my respect for Harry Chapin has evolved from his music writing to the things that he did outside of music. He was a humanitarian who worked tirelessly towards trying to end world hunger. His work and lobbying of Congress were critical in the creation of the Presidential Commission on World Hunger in 1977. And when he was alive, he performed over 200 concerts every year, and the profits from 50% of those concerts he donated to various charities that supported efforts to end world hunger. In 1986, he was posthumously awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. And the Congressional Gold Medal, along with the Medal of Freedom, are really the highest honors that a civilian can receive here in the United States. I like to remind people about Harry Chapin because I believe he demonstrated a level of hard work, commitment, and dedication that we can all learn from. From a personal, selfish perspective, I like to use it as a chance to remind myself that I spend too much time watching TV and wasting other time when I should be doing other more important things. This morning I sent an email to everyone in TGIF, and it includes a number of links that you might find interesting. And if you're busy, I would encourage you to look at least the first link. It's a video of a YouTube video of Bruce Springsteen telling a wonderful story about Harry Chapin and doing one of his songs. It comes from a concert that was at Carnegie Hall in 1986 when his wife, Sandy Chapin, was given the medal that he was awarded, the Congressional Medal or the Congressional Gold Medal. On Harry Chapin's gravestone, he has a verse from one of his songs. It goes, "If a man tried to take his time on earth and prove before he died what one man's life could be worth, I wonder what would happen to this world." Now, I don't want people to think that Harry was a chauvinist, so I'd like to clarify that the second verse of that song goes, "And if a woman spent her lifetime doing more than some man's servant, mother, wife time, well, I wonder what would happen to this world." And if I could sing like Bo, we could really have some fun. I'd like to finish up this speech by sharing one of my favorite Harry Chapin stories. And it's the story about a small town in rural America and the friendship between an old man and a young man. It's called Corey's Coming. Old John Joseph was a man with two first names. They left him in the railroad yard when they took away the trains. And only one run a week comes on roaring down that line, so all he's got to worry about is time. I'd come by in the evening to hear about where he'd been. He'd smile and say, "Sit down, kid. Where shall I begin?" He'd start telling me the stories of the glories of his past, but he always saved the story of his Corey for the last. And he said, "My Corey's coming. No more sad stories coming. My midnight, moonlight, morning glories coming, aren't you, girl? And like I told you, when she holds you, I was quite surprised to find out all the places that he knew, so I asked the townsfolk if his stories were true. They said old John was born here. He's lived here all his life. Never had a woman, let alone a wife. And very soon you'll find out, as you check around, no one named Corey's ever lived in this town. So I chided the old man about the truth that I had heard, but he smiled and said, reality, it's only just a word. Can't you see my Corey's coming? No more sad stories coming. My midnight, moonlight, morning glories coming, aren't you, girl? And like I told you, when she holds you, she enfolds you in her world. I came by one evening, but he did not hear my shout. I looked in the window, and I saw the fire was out. When he did not wake up, I forced in the door, and I found that old John Joseph would tell stories no more. The scene at the graveyard, just three of us were there, me and the grave digger. We heard the parson's prayer. He said, we need not grieve for this man, for we know that God cares. They put the cold dirt over him, left me on my own. When at last I looked up, I saw I was not alone. Standing there in silence, with a shawl around her head, was a beautiful woman. I remember what she said. Is that John Joseph there? I nodded my head yes. She said, it's time you got some rest. So I said, if you're a relative, he had a peaceful end. That's when she said, my name is Corey. You can say I'm just a friend. Corey's coming. No more sad stories coming. Midnight, morning glories coming, aren't you, girl? And like he told me, when she holds you, she enfolds you in her world. Well, that's the old man's story. I'm glad you came this morning. You see, a busted down railroad yard sure makes a lonely sight. You may wonder why a young man would work out here alone. Well, the job pays enough to keep some flesh on my bones. And I confess I get to missing